what we covered this week was essentially everything around the sales call and whether or not it's in your best interest to understand what happens ahead of the call, the kind of things that the prospect has gone through, as well as where they sit in the overall flow of the client or the prospect journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look, James, you and I have been in sales a long time. Prospects don't just miraculously end up on your Zoom link or on your phone or in front of you. They had an experience and a journey to get there. How could you not want to know what that journey is? Because it's going to set the scene for what comes with your sales call. You don't want to go in blind. You don't want to have a jarring transition from your sales experience to what they're expecting. It's a fixable problem. So we talk about that in depth on this call.
And we go through a couple of points as well on where you can go to start learning about these things. Mm-hmm. So the fundamental positions, and then essentially where you can ascend to over time. But I think there's a bit of information in this for everyone, whether or not, yep. And specifically we talk a lot about juniors as well as people that have got some more time. So I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, me too. Look forward to it.
Thanks, Michael. What are we talking about today? So I had a thought just before we hopped on this call. So I saw a post by someone that was talking about being good at more than just one thing. Mm-hmm. As in, people say my objection handling is amazing, so I'm great at sales calls. Mm-hmm. But you drop the ball within the first 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Then I thought about that. What if we make it much bigger? So I know you don't like the word synergy, but the power.
Any corporate word.
Yeah, it's very corporate. But the power in knowing the whole process. As in, sure, you might know that little sales wedge.
Sure.
But what happens to get the lead to you? What do the funnels actually look like? And then between the lead booking in and them coming to you,
you want to go to that degree? Okay, like the complete ecosystem. I thought you were going to go with like the complete call, not just thinking that if I can smash objections at the end, I can close anybody.
I think that's a small frame, as in if we focus just on the sales side of things. Sure. But I think there is power in knowing the whole process.
Sure. We can talk about that for sure. Okay, let's talk about that.
Let's do it.
Right. Where do we start?
I think when maybe even a few years ago, I was just sales and I knew marketing. I mean, done a marketing degree, but again, a marketing degree as opposed to what's actually happening now is very different. So I understood a lot of the fundamentals, but it was only probably 2 to 3 years ago that I really got a grasp on what happens before me, what happens after me in the process, and mapping out that prospect journey in a linear fashion.
Yep.
And understanding what the prospect sees ahead of me, what they're exposed to, what the copy, the content, the ads and everything say. That changed my sales process a lot.
Okay.
A lot. Do you adapt yours based on the funnels, the leads, or how the prospects are primed for the call?
Well, I'm fortunate now that for the last 3 or so years, I've been on offers where I've had a direct relationship with marketing and a direct input in what that whole experience looks and feels like before they get to us. Prior to 3 or 4 years ago, that wasn't the case. I was, like you said a minute ago, I was a sales guy. But actually, no, also, if we go back to our fitness days back in the day, where I first met you in 2011, 12, 13, 14, that era, when I was on site at gyms with my own business, and even before that when I worked for a company doing the same model in the mid to late 2000s, I was responsible for conceptualizing the marketing campaign and then creating it all and implementing it. So I guess I do have experience going back into that space, but it is different in the digital space. Obviously, it draws from the same principles and concepts, but the execution is very, very, very different. So, with the offer I sell on now and with a couple I've sold on prior to this, I had a really tight relationship with marketing, and we collectively conceptualized and agreed on what the whole experience looked like from, when they first came into contact with the offer through to booking a call. And even if it was a 2-call close, which on the BizOp I sold for 2 years, it was 2-call close, what it looked like between the set and the close call, what materials they were exposed to, what that looked and felt like, all that sort of stuff. So, look, it's not available to everybody to have access to the marketing department, to be trusted by the offer owner, to be in conversations like that. But even when you get to a stage where it is, it's hugely beneficial on 2 levels. You can shape the offer in your image in the sense that, you can really influence what happens before it gets to you, and then when it marries up with what you do, the synergy word you used before is in place, increases the chances of the offer successful. You make lots of sales and have a great time. But beyond that, it also builds out your skill set and your experience set and your confidence and awareness, which then makes you extremely powerful in comparison to who you were before. And it gives you so many more options. You know, you don't have to just be a commission-only sales guy. You can become a sales strategist. You can become a chief revenue officer. You can build your own offer out. You can take that into entrepreneurship and other aspects. So, yeah, a huge fan. Like, I would never work on an offer again where I didn't have a relationship with marketing and wasn't part of the conversations, because you just can't have that disconnect. You can't have that jarring transition from the marketing experience and the expectations pre-call to what's waiting for them when they get on the call with you. It's just, no one wins. The prospect doesn't win. You don't win as a salesperson. The marketing doesn't win. Like, no one wins. So it makes total sense to be on the same page. Your thoughts?
It's almost a game in my eyes. So if you are in an ecosystem where none of that is connected well, and essentially you've got prospects showing up to the call and they're saying, well, what is this about? I don't really know what you guys do.
Yeah.
That is level 0, as in things are not where they need to be.
Yeah.
Things are not going well. And you need to, as a start point, adjust what they see ahead of time so they have an understanding of what the company is and what's going to happen on that call. And then I think that's level 0, just so there's some kind of smooth transition through. And then you get to the point where they know what you're about, they know what the call is going to be about. And then you can start to gamify things. Like if they keep coming up over a decent data set, of course, if they keep coming up with the same objection or the same hesitation, or maybe they just don't know one thing, you can say, well, the last 10 people or 5 of the last 10 have said this. Why do we not cover that upstream?
Sure.
And then you can add that in, and then maybe something else comes off the back of that. Yeah, you said this, but what this? So there are all of these off ramps for the prospect along the journey of like, oh, it's too hard. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. You can systematically close those off ramps so that the only logical decision for the person that does get to the call, assuming it ticked the boxes, is for them to get started.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Look, you touched on something then. You said if problems happen downstream, it's probably because of an area upstream. I mean, that applies generally speaking in sales calls, but also on marketing. I mean, if a prospect turns up and says, who are you guys? What's this call about? That problem should have been taken care of before they even got onto the call. You know, something about the pre-call experience, there was a disconnect. Something about your confirmation or setting of expectations before they got on that call, there was a disconnect. Like, outside of outliers that ignored everything you told them, like you literally couldn't have done anything more, and they should be outliers. No one should ever turn up on a sales call in that state who's gone through a marketing funnel. That's a different story if it's a cold call or referral or some other things. But if they've gone through a marketing experience, they should never turn up in that state.
But even if you were to apply this thinking to outbound cold calling, when you call that person, you're not going to hit them with the same thing that you would hit them on an inbound set, and the same thing that you would hit them on an inbound close call. You have to realize that they're at the start of this journey and they have all of this that comes after them. So what are the things that we say now to make sure that, 1, they are the right fit, but 2, that we can condition them or prime them for the path that they're about to go. But again, that cold calling and that outbound thing, that's a whole other call in itself.
Yeah, that's a whole other call. You and I did that on same accounts and some different ones for 6, 7, 8 months in the first 2020, COVID year 1, when we both came full-time into this world. Another, I think, a dedicated call on cold call, of course. Yeah.
So if you were in a salesperson's shoes where they're kind of stuck to knowing what the set call is or what the close call is, and they were willing to understand or wanting to understand the bigger picture, where they actually fit in the scheme of things, what would you say?
What would I say in what sense? Like, if you're on an offer, how do you get the information you need, or what do you mean?
How do you start to think bigger than just I take sales calls? How do you start to think of where do I slot in?
Well, we're going to go back to identity levels where it almost always ends up. It all depends on who you want to be and how you want to live your life. I mean, if you're happy just being a salesperson, just closing for 10% commission or whatever, and you have no problems at all with that playing out for the next 5, 10, 15 years or beyond, then there's no need to go into the areas we're going to talk about. But if your ambitions go beyond that, and even if they want to stay in the sales space, there's nothing wrong with staying as a salesperson. You become infinitely more powerful if you understand the marketing that brought them there and what it looked and felt like from the prospect's point of view before they got on a call with you, because that's going to shape what their energy, what their expectations, what their hopes, what their boundaries are, what they're open to, what they're closed to, what they think's waiting for them, how they're going to treat you, how they're going to respond to certain things that you're going to say. Like, how could you not want to know that? How could you not want to be on the inside and know that and then shape that and adapt it? You know, no one benefits, as I said earlier, if there's a jarring transition from marketing experience to sales. You're going to make less sales. So even if you just want to stay a salesperson, you're going to make less sales and make less money and enjoy your job less and all those sorts of things. So as always, it appeals to your self-interest to go and learn and get competent and confident and self-aware in those areas. You'll make more sales. You'll be able to make tweaks to the offer, which makes it just run better. You'll have a learning and awareness and skill set that transcends outside of this offer into bigger and better things. Like, how could you not want that? Presuming you're ambitious.
I don't even think if you don't have the capacity to tweak the offer, then that's okay. Even if, like this time of year with some of the offers that people work with, some of the calls coming through will be your usual inbound calls, and then other ones will be on the back of maybe webinars, 2025 transformation calls, and then maybe some of them will be workshop calls or whatever it is. So they're going to be coming in via different funnels, and how you handle an inbound is not the same as way as you're going to handle a transformation or a workshop call.
Yep.
So you have to be able to adapt to what they see, what they hear, what they feel ahead of time.
A free strategy session, speak to James to get your results from your test session, which is quickly going to pivot into a sales call. There's so many different names for what these sessions represent, and the communication and feeling around that represents a different experience. But often waiting for them is a cookie cutter sales experience, and it's a very jarring transition. There's quite a lot of guys that I coach that are on offers where the prospects get on a strategy session or a free strategy session, or get on a, get the results. They bought an app or took some sort of test, and then they get on to talk about the results the next day. And obviously the idea is to pivot that into a sales session.
Even got those ones, like the fitness ones where they bought a $50 program,
Yes.
or maybe they bought some supplements, and then all of a sudden they're on a sales call for a 5K.
I don't have anyone on that famous fitness one anymore. I used to have about 10 or 12 students on it.
Yeah, I think that famous fitness one's
yeah,
pretty much
it
gone.
seems like it's done its dash.
Yeah.
But I've still got others that are on offers, and we've got to handle that delicately. We've got to handle it delicately for lots of reasons, to keep it ethical, to keep it, transparent and, with integrity. Also to not have a jarring transition when it moves from what they thought it was to what it's now becoming, to get them buying in and acquiescing and wanting to go along with where the call's going. Like, there's a lot that we have to do to make that transition from free strategy session into now it's a sales call, without just, the worst is when it's a free strategy session and there's no strategy. It's just straight into a sales call. Can you imagine how jarring that is for the prospects?
Yep. If I map it out, if I have my iPad here, I will draw it out, of course. I map it out systematically, as in the sales process itself. You can break it down from add to encouraged to be booked into the call, then the booking of the call, and then there's a gap between the booking and the set. And then what they see there determines how they show up to the set call. But the problem that most companies have is they'll have a clickbait ad, and then the info that they get ahead of the set call doesn't align with what was in the ad. And they think, wait, what am I actually signing up for? Then the setter just shows up, follows their script, and it doesn't align with the ad or what they were sent ahead of time. And then they drop them into basically a no man's land between the set and the close call, where they get sent information that probably still doesn't align with any of those sort of things. So by the time the prospect gets to the close call, they're just thinking, what have I actually signed up for?
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like a ridiculous exercise, but if you go through the funnel from the prospect side of view,
sadly it doesn't.
It's most companies.
Yep. Yeah. No. It absolutely. See, I haven't been on an offer like that for a very long time, so I feel a little disconnected in a personal sense from that world. But a lot of my students are still living that, so I hear through them what it's like. And it's tough, you know. These are guys on where getting 10, 15% close rates is considered acceptable. I mean, we're trying to get them to 20 to 30 because that feels like it's about as much juice as we can get out of that particular, you know, piece of fruit. But 80, 90, 100%, you or I wouldn't get it. It's if you can get 20 or 30, like you're doing pretty well. What you don't want to be doing is speaking to all these people for an hour and then price presenting them and trying to close them at the end. You'll go insane. If you're closing, if only 20% are closable, you know, and that means you're doing well, you have to be, and this is a segue for another call, maybe another time, but you have to be able to identify those 80% who are not the 20% as early as possible and figure out if they really are in the 80% category. And if they really are, like, end the call pretty soon. Otherwise, you're going to go insane.
You can sift through them as well, because if they're not in that 20% that can buy now, of that 100%, maybe there's another 20% that will be in that position within the next 2 to 3 months.
Sure, and I'm not burn the lead. I'm not saying burn the lead.
That's the thing. That's the thing. You can either burn through them right now,
yes,
or drop them into your equivalent of another funnel of like, let me drop you into a sequence or send you something across.
Nurturing. It's recognizing that based on their answers and your interpretation of their answers, your judgment, they're not yet, and maybe they never will be, but they're not yet at a point where it makes sense for whatever reason, and they will have told you what the reason is, to treat this as a sales call. Because even if you like what you see and it meets your criteria, you're still not ready based on what you've told me. And you're not able to change it, which is totally fine. I mean, you obviously stress test this and come at it from multiple angles to make sure it's real and to see if there's any way you can open it up. You don't just roll over. But if 5 or 6 minutes later that is the case, to me, it's no longer a sales call. It's now, you know, let's drop you into nurturing and reconnect at an agreed time with agreed next steps. But I don't burn the lead. I don't humiliate them. I don't try and hard close them and do 40 minutes of objection handling. Of course, you'll get 1 in 50 in that situation, but that means you've got to do 50 calls to get 1 sale when that's the start point. Could you imagine spending 50 hours when that's the start point to get 1 sale? Awful.
I mean, if you earn $200K for the sale, then perhaps.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But you earn $500. You know, so awful return on investment, awful use of your time. Spiritually, it's just crushing if you're doing that to people like all the time. You know, there's better ways to live. But that's probably another call.
But learning what happens around it, learning what happens before, after, and being able to see yourself in a much bigger system as opposed to just taking that sales call.
Yes.
It helps you select better companies to work with, but more importantly, and this is something that I notice, is if you can pull this apart and actually take it to the companies, as long as they're receptive, and if they're not receptive, then that's probably a bit of a red flag. But as long as they're receptive and you can just say, hey, I went through this whole process and this is what the prospects see here. This is what they see here. And you can physically draw this out as the prospect just gets pinballed everywhere. So by the time they get to the call, this is the reason they're saying all of these things. And this is what I've seen. Yeah. And you all of a sudden go from, he just takes sales calls to, whoa. And well, I've done it on a number of accounts.
Yeah, this is what I said earlier about becoming a sales strategist, for want of a better word. Look, there's probably a dedicated call in that as well in terms of how you have those conversations. I mean, for anyone that's read the book, The 48 Laws of Power, the first law is never outshine the master. And this is something I talk about all the time with those that I help. And, you know, there's an art in how you have those conversations with an offer owner or a sales manager, which makes it likely you'll get what you want and you don't burn the relationship up. That's probably a dedicated call. But yeah, I completely agree. If you can move yourself into that position, you're back to what I said earlier. It benefits you in the now. You make more sales. It's an easier sell. And it benefits you in the long run. You elevate your position, your experience, your capabilities, which means you can do more things and get more things. And you'll start seeing opportunities that others don't see. You might even create your own offer. Why not? You've got the skill set to do it. You know, instead of being hired by an offer owner as the sales guy, you build a team out and hire in the gaps that you don't have. Well, that guy writes my copy and runs my Facebook ads. I do everything sales related. I hire that guy to do fulfillment. I'm now an offer owner. Why not?
Positions you completely separate.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely. And that internally, that means you're going to see things you didn't see before and be open to things you had never considered. Who knows where that takes you? And externally, others will view and see you different. More things will come to you. More things will come through you. You know, you'll be able to connect trusted, friends and colleagues to opportunities that you're too busy to look at, or it's just not the right one for you. But people came to you and said, "Can you do it, Michael?" "No, I can't, but James probably could. Let me introduce you to James." Then you become even more valuable because you're
It
building.
takes a lot of the ambiguity out as well. I don't know why this isn't working. It should be. I'm hoping it can get to this.
Sure.
Well, then you have measurable metrics and you can map it all out very clearly as
Yeah.
to why things happen in a certain way.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's a much better existence. It's not there for the younger entry level guys. Developing an
Well,
awareness.
I think it is. I think it is.
Awareness, but not necessarily affecting change. I would say that's where I'm going with that. You should have the awareness, but I don't think you're going to have the platform to go in and tell the offer owner to change this and change that and change
There's a
it.
difference between understanding and having the platform to actually say it.
Sure, which is what my point is. Yeah, a young guy absolutely should have the awareness, but he's probably not going to conduct change. An older, more experienced person with credibility, with a track record of delivering, with an awareness, if handled right, probably can make change happen more often than not.
So the example that comes to mind there, of course, it's a jiu-jitsu example. So in jiu-jitsu, you can't do heel hooks until you're a purple belt because they will just destroy someone's knee if you are an inch out of place. But everybody starts learning them at white belt and blue belt so that by the time you get to a purple belt, you're not there thinking, oh, everyone else has been doing this for years. I'm just starting now. So you're not allowed to do them in comps unless you, or in the training room, unless you're with someone that's trusted, but you still start learning before that. So I think even if you start out, instead of feeling stuck of, I don't know what happens around me or why, learn the sales call, learn the process, but then learn what happens before and after. And even if you only learn one tiny little bit per month, that will compound massively.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And, if your budget allows it, and there are free options, consider joining a program like Alan's NHB or Fast Forward, or just follow his free content, because a lot of that is about copy, offer.
I wouldn't say that. Alan's way too hectic to start with.
But you can start with his free Facebook group, and you can start with the posts in there, not just by Alan, but by other copywriters, lead generators, marketers, everything in that space. You can start to just build out your awareness, pick the guys that you resonate with, maybe not like the A graders, but maybe the B and C graders, and you might be able to connect with them and network with them as well, and learn more from them.
I think that's what you do after you've been looking at it for quite a while. I think if you're starting out, go to YouTube, search how a funnel works, or go to ChatGPT and search how a funnel works, because the stuff Alan does is just 17 to 18 layers past fun. I even look at some of Alan's stuff now and I think that's so niche. It's barely applicable to a lot. He's super smart, but I wouldn't say that's a good start place.
I think his group is somewhere that you want to be. Even if you're young and up and coming, in his free group, I think there's so much content in there, so many posts in there. I think you'll get value, because a lot of it's about framing and positioning and language and things like that, which translates into sales. I mean, I'm in his paid group, Fast Forward. I'm not in there to learn how to build a funnel. Whenever it's on that topic, I don't typically go to those calls or pay attention. My attention just isn't there. I'm in there because his understanding of human behavior and psychology, is phenomenal. And whilst it's mainly angled towards a marketing, copywriting, lead generating perspective, I can extract principles from that, put it through my funnel, and then bang, it becomes something I can use. As you know, as we've talked about that a lot. So yeah, you're not coming in for those reasons, but you can see in the free group, and there's other groups as well, you can see the way they talk about structuring offers, what the experience should look like leading up to a call, things like that.
We've talked about this a lot. You and I are very different on that topic, and you love Alan, you love the way he teaches, whereas for me, it's too much squeezing for too little juice. So if I view anything of Alan's, or anything, it goes through AI and gets distilled. And it's not too high level. It's very high level for high level thinkers. I just think if you were starting out, you ascend to Alan, knowing that you're going to have to go through a lot of volume. Sure.
But that's an example of you and I talk sales. We go beyond sales, but sales is our core. that's an example of a guy whose core is more the things that happen leading up to them getting on a call with us. Probably the highest example. Maybe Alex Hormozy's better. Maybe you go and read, his
that's a good example.
his purple book, and equivalents like that. Maybe that's a better place to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, the bottom line is you can't lose in developing an awareness, an appreciation, and understanding of what happens to get somebody on a call, on the offer you're on in particular, the specifics of what it looks and feels like, which sets their expectations, sets their energy, sets context. And you want to work with that, not against that. Because if you work against it, it's going to be jarring. And jarring,
you won't win.
No, jarring typically triggers fight or flight. Fight meaning like, hey, you suck, James. Like, how could you mislead me? We're having that conversation. That's not going anywhere good. Or flight, they either literally hang up and leave, or they just shut down and they just sort of completely withdraw because this doesn't feel safe or interesting or desirable anymore. They're there, but they're not there. You're not making a sale if either of those two things are in play. And when you understand the marketing, it can really work well for your initial questions in particular. If you know that, I don't know, just use jiu-jitsu for example. If you know that 90% of people that join a jiu-jitsu gym as a newbie come for one of three reasons, and sometimes there's a crossover, but they've been bullied, they want to get fit, or they want to challenge themselves mentally. Let's say that those three things come up 90% of the time, one of those three things, and that your marketing reflects those three things. That can be one of your first questions, along the lines of, so James, which of the three caught your eye? Was it, the bullying? Was it the blah, blah, blah? And we're speaking the same language. It's congruent with the experience I had coming in. They're already thinking, this guy kind of gets me, like he knows I'm here for one of these three reasons. And you just build off that. There's a smooth, as opposed to the jarring that I mentioned earlier. Like, how could you not want
that?
Yep. Yeah. So go get it. Get it. Go and learn. Go and understand the experience the prospect has before they get on your call. Empathy, putting yourself in the prospect's shoes, understanding what it looks and feels like from their point of view, doesn't mean you agree or approve. You just appreciate and understand what it probably looks and feels like from their end. Like, is a superpower in communication and sales. How could you not want to know what they've gone through to get onto this call and what their expectations are? And then have a nice, smooth transition into talking to you. How could you not want that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's obvious what our position is.
Yeah, you absolutely should. Go out there, learn how funnels work, how sequences work, what a typical prospect journey is, and then
learn the specifics for your offer. Because, like, I think what you're talking about there, James, is kind of like fundamentals that are probably in place in some way, shape, or form on every offer. But then learn the specifics of what it looks like on your offer. Like, what do the ads look like? Where are they? Who are they targeting?
What do they say?
What do they say? What do they imply?
What do they make the prospect feel?
That's right. If you were to look at it and you try to put yourself in their shoes, if you were sort of going through the typical symptoms that your prospects go through, what would be your response to it? Where would your thoughts and feelings take you? Based on the communication leading to the sales meeting, what sort of expectations does it set? What do you think they're waiting? What do you think they think's waiting for them here? Do you think they even know it's a sales call? You want to be able to answer all these questions, and then tailor your approach accordingly. None of this is changing the offer. That's for higher level people. If you're a junior, you're just appreciating and understanding, and then adapting based on all of that information.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think that's a good spot to leave it.
Cool.
We've definitely made our position known. But I will see you on the next one.
Sounds good, James. See you then.
Cheers.